So these are jar files which we need for this project. Okay, and just a second, let me just close this. Here it is. It's a web application, so obviously we will start it as dynamic web project. I'm creating a new dynamic web project. Next, project name is first MVC demo. Okay, I'm using Servlet API 2.5. Apache Tomcat has already been selected over here. Okay, project name is first MVC demo, dynamic web module 2.5. Let me select next, next, and finish. This will make, yeah, huh? 2.5, because if I select 3.0 or 3.1, there will be no web.xml, or web.xml is optional in those cases. Okay, anyway, if you want, you can select 3.0 or 3.1, and just make sure that you select that option, generate web.xml, and next and finish. That way it will work. That's okay. Okay, now let's go to our web.inf folder. Can you see here there is a folder called lib, which is by default empty. Now what we need to do is, this is not a simple Java console application. It's a web application. And in web application, you cannot use right click, build path, then add external jar. That option will not work. You have to copy all jar files inside this lib folder. Which folder? This lib folder. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to copy all the jar files from the Spring MVC folder. I'll copy them and I'll paste them inside this lib folder. So here it is, paste. You can see here all jar files are now appearing inside lib. Yes, because it's a web application. Why? It's because when you are working with web application, Eclipse copy this application, or Eclipse will send this entire application to Tomcat for execution, right? So what it has to do is not just .java file, XML file, and HTML file, but Eclipse has to copy all required jar files as well, all the dependencies as well, to Apache Tomcat. That's why. Okay, so all required jar files, all dependencies are now present in lib folder. Yes. Now we need configuration. What we need? Configuration. Let's see how we configure it. This is my web.xml file, and here I'm going to put my here I'm going to configure my servlet dispatcher. What I'll do is, I'll first add one servlet tag. Inside servlet tag, let's create a logical servlet whose name is Mahendra. Servlet class. Now here it is, org.springframework.web.servlet.dispatcher servlet. Okay, this is complete name of this servlet class, dispatcher servlet class. org.springframework.web.servlet.dispatcher servlet. What if you can't remember this entire class name? Yes, you can do one simple trick. Go to Java resources. Can you see there is an option called libraries here? Don't use this option, use this libraries option. Here it will give you an option called web app libraries. All the jar files which you have copied in this lib folder are available through this libraries section. Okay, let me just expand it. Can you see all the jar files appearing here? But the difference is, in front of every jar file, sorry, not in front, before every jar file, there is this symbol mark, symbol is there. If you click on it, it will actually extract that jar file and show all the contents to you. Okay, so where we are going? Dispatcher servlet is somewhere in Spring-Web. So we'll go to Spring Web. Inside Spring Web, let me show you where exactly it is. It's inside web.servlet. Where it is? Wait a second, it's not in here. No. Dot web hai, yes. I don't think there is a dispatcher servlet inside this. Wait a second. Let me check another jar file. It must be then inside Spring Web MVC. This one. Okay, yes. First package. Can you see this? org.springframework.web.servlet. If I expand it, you can see second option here is dispatcher servlet. So complete name of this class is org.springframework.web.servlet.dispatcher servlet. This is entry point of our application, we can say. Okay. Now, to speed up execution of my application, I want the servlet to be started immediately when application is deployed. So load on startup 1. Now the mapping part. Now this is kind of tricky thing. Here we'll assign name of servlet, same name which I have written on top, same name I have to use, same logical name I have to use, and then the URL pattern. Wait a second, I made a mistake. Should be servlet mapping, not servlet. Should be servlet mapping. Servlet tag I have already written for this servlet. Okay, and here it should be URL pattern. Let's make it star.do. What is URL pattern for this servlet now? Star.do is my URL pattern. Is that clear? Everyone? Yes? Clear or not? Now we need to create one configuration file whose name should be this name hyphen servlet.xml. So it should be Mahindra hyphen servlet.xml file. So let's do that. What I need here is a Spring Bean configuration file. Can you see this option? Yes? Next. It should be inside WebINF folder. Which folder? WebINF. And it should not be inside SRC now. It should be in WebINF, not in SRC. So let's name it Mahindra hyphen servlet.xml. Next. Okay. Right now we just need beans tag and nothing else. I'll explain you how to use other namespaces later. Right now our program would be a very small program, simple program. Yes, let me click finish. Okay, this is my Spring Bean configuration file. Now we don't have to write new ClassPath XML application context. No, that will be done by this dispatcher servlet. Right? You don't have to write that application context equal to new. That part is now omitted. That will be done by dispatcher servlet automatically for us. So we don't have to write that. But we need to do something. Bean class. Let's see what I'm going to do now. org.springframework.web.servlet.handler. Bean name URL handler mapping. Okay. You remember I told you there is something called URL handler or handler component. This is how I have defined handler to be bean name URL handler. Now what exactly this mean? This means inside my Spring Bean configuration file, I will define beans with name attribute instead of ID attribute. Actually, it's not like instead of. You can have both attribute at once. Name attribute. And you know what this handler is doing? It is informing my dispatcher servlet that if user makes a request with URL welcome.do, then use this class com.mahindra.welcomeController class. Which class to use? com.mahindra.welcomeController class to be used if request came for welcome.do URL. Is that clear? Yes. Let me put a comment here. Inform dispatcher servlet to use bean name attribute as request URL. To match request URL with bean ka name attribute using this handler mapping component. Yes. One more thing. Spring Framework is based on lot many conventions. Actually speaking, this line is optional. as soon as you start defining name attribute for your controller classes, Spring will understand that you want to use bean name URL handler mapping. It will be automatic. So this line is actually optional. Even if you don't write this line, it will still use bean name URL handler mapping. What it will use? Bean name URL handler mapping. Only thing is, here I have explicitly mentioned it. Now I have mentioned it explicitly. Otherwise, it's implicitly same thing. Okay. Whenever your bean tags have name attribute, Spring's dispatcher servlet will use bean name URL handler mapping. Okay.
डॉट हैंडलर लिखा तो भी चलेगा
क्या?
सिर्फ डॉट हैंडलर तक लिखा तो भी चलेगा
नहीं 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 नहीं,
मतलब क्या
ये पूरा लाइन ही हटा दो.
अच्छा पूरा लाइन
हाँ, और इतना ही लिखो. Now dispatcher servlet will look at your bean and its name attribute, and it will understand beans to be matched with their name attribute, or request URL to be matched with their name attribute. It will be automatic, but this is better, for clarity. This is better for clarity. Okay. Now, why do you think I'm getting red underline for this class attribute? It's saying you don't have any such class. Okay. Let's create one. So this time we are going to create one class. Here we create a package com.mahindra which should match with this package name which I have written, and class name is welcome controller. You don't have to inherit it from any class. That's okay. Wait a second. We are not using annotation based approach, right? We are not using annotation. We are using explicit approach. Then we need this inheriting thing. We need to inherit it from some class. When we will use annotation based approach, then we don't have to inherit it from anyone. Let's inherit it from abstract controller. Okay. It's a base class actually.
एनोटेशन वाला यूज करते हैं
एनोटेशन वाला हम लोग बाद में करेंगे. अभी फिलहाल मैं आपको एनोटेशन नहीं दिखा रहा हूँ. अभी मैं आपको दिखा रहा हूँ बेसिक अप्रोच. You should be aware of this approach. It's because many of Spring projects are still using older approach instead of newer one. That's why. Now look at this. There is a single method over there called handle request internal. What is method name? Handle request internal. Okay. And can you see there are two familiar arguments over there? HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Yes. Now consider it like this. You can say this is like a servlet. This is like a servlet in your normal application. Only difference is in servlet we had do get and do post method. Here we have handle request internal method. Handle request I understand. Okay, it means request handling. But why internal? It's because it uses internal dispatcher, or it uses request dispatcher. Let's see how. Okay, now what is this? This is something new. What is return type of this method? Model and view. This is a composite object. This model and view object contains a map, java.util.map, which contains all model attributes, whatever data you want to store. And it contains view name. Okay, now let's try to understand what exactly it is. What I'll do is, I'll create a new element, or I'll create a new object of this model and view class. So model and view equal to new model and view. Okay, here we can provide view name. View name is hello. What is view name? Hello. Now this MV actually has an internal map where you can store values, key and value pairs. So let's add it. Can you see there is a method called add object? Yes. Now let's provide first object message, and here I'll provide value for it. Welcome to Spring MVC. Okay, this is my value. Okay. Can we add one more value into it? Yes, we can add one more like mv dot add object, mv dot add object, mv dot add object. Okay, we can add several objects into it, and then simply we return mv like this. Return mv. Now, how this thing work? You remember I told you dispatcher servlet is responsible to create instance of this individual controller class, right? Then dispatcher servlet will call its handle request internal method. Handle request internal method handle request internal method will then return a composite object, model and view object back to dispatcher servlet. Okay, and this model and view object contains two things. Number one, view id, which is hello, and number two, a message. MSG is the key and value is welcome to Spring MVC. Okay, let's see how it works. Now, before we go to next step, is it possible to run it directly? No. There are small problems here. Number one, it's okay, we can run this program, but when you make request welcome.do, it will be handled by this method. This method will return hello, and hello, there is no such page defined anywhere, or there is no such view component defined anywhere in your application. So you will ultimately get 404 error. What error you will get? 404 if you try to run that. So let's create view component then. Okay, don't you think I have just written hello? Don't you think it should be hello.jsp or hello.mt or fmt if I'm using FreeMarker, any other view page technology, or it should be hello.xml? Why it's just hello? It's because it's not a name of page, it's a view ID. What is it? View ID. Let's define our view resolver here. Next part is to define view resolver. View resolver. For view resolver, this ID attribute is optional. Even if you don't provide ID attribute, it will still work. Its class name is org.springframework.web.servlet. View dot internal resource view resolver. See this? Okay. Let's provide a property. First property is view class. View.jstl view. I hope this property name is correct. Okay, next property which I have to provide is prefix. Value for prefix is /web inf/pages/ and then another property is suffix. Value is .jsp. Okay, now let me explain how this internal resource view resolver will work. This internal resource view resolver will provide a component, view resolver component, or it will perform or it will act as a view resolver. View resolver simply means controller is giving you view ID, right? View resolver is responsible to translate that view ID into real view, and for that our first property is view class, which will inform it that it's a JSTL view. Okay, JSTL view will actually provide two things. It will clarify that view page technology which you are using is JSP, Java Server Pages. You are using Java Server Pages, and not just that, in those Java server pages, you will be adding JSTL support, Java server tag library support. Which support? Java server tag library support. This will make sure that inside those JSP pages, you can use JSTL tags. And not just that, those JSTL tags can communicate with Spring Framework or can read data from your Spring model components. So it will add a compatibility layer between them. Okay, now let's see next. What is prefix? Web-inf/pages/ and suffix.jsp. What it will do? It will take view ID. For that view ID, it will add prefix and then suffix. Means if your view ID is hello, what your method has returned? Hello. So suffix is dot JSP. And what is prefix? Yes?
You will put that page there in that location.
Yes.
And sir,
Okay, now one more thing. Here you can actually provide any path. You can write web-inf/pages, you can write web-inf/ or you can write web-inf/docs. You can write anything. But why do we write web-inf? It's because this is a typical problem of traditional web application. Your JSP pages, if they are stored outside web-inf, that means client can make direct request to them. Client can make direct request to them. Like if there is a page.jsp in web content web content folder, anyone in browser can write application URL / hello.jsp and page will access. Spring is kind of very strict MVC framework. What Spring is saying, you should not allow your end users, browsers, to have direct access to pages. Instead of that, browsers or client should always request controller classes. Who? Controller. And through controller, they should get view pages. Through controller, they should reach these pages. So there is a simple trick here. Store all your pages inside web-inf. Reason is, client cannot request anything from web-inf folder. Anything from web-inf folder. But an existing web server-side program or existing server-side program can read or access web-inf folder. Okay? Dispatcher servlet has full access to everything that is stored inside web-inf. It can make an internal request to web-inf folder or any pages which are stored inside web-inf. But client web browser, in browser if you type application/web-inf/something, your browser will always redirect or always provide 404 error to you, even though page exists. Let's say there is a page1.jsp inside web-inf folder, and if in web browser if you write my application/web-inf/page1.jsp, even though page1.jsp exists in web-inf folder, browser will always give you 404 error. Why? Because when browser will make a request is intercepted by servlet container. What servlet container will do? Servlet container understands that not to allow client to have direct access to web-inf. So if client is requesting anything from web-inf folder directly, it will simply send 404 error and it will not load that resource. But indirectly it is possible. Okay? Indirectly it is possible. That's why. So this is a simple trick. Suffix is .jsp because those are JSP pages. So now what do you think? What we have to do now? We have to make one folder, pages inside web-inf, and then we have to make one JSP page called hello.jsp. What page we have to make? Hello.jsp. Now, what is Spring benefit here? Your entire project is using JSP pages. What your application is right now using? JSP pages. But in future, you changed your decision. Okay. In future, your team made a completely different decision. JSPs are very old-fashioned things. Let's use free marker or velocity templates. Then what we should do? Simple. Instead of using internal resource view resolver, use velocity or free marker resolver and configure it accordingly. Yes?
So what does view resolver do?
Huh?
View resolver क्या करती है?
View resolver, see, this welcome controller is returning only view ID, right? View resolver will inform dispatcher servlet that hello is actually hello.jsp, which is stored inside webinf/pages. In case if you are using velocity template, then you will be using velocity view resolver that will inform dispatcher servlet that hello is not hello.jsp, it is hello.velocity, or velocity might be using some different extension, right? Like free marker uses ft or ff extension, so it will use that.
What if we want to use JSF?
JSF, for JSF you don't need view resolver thing. For JSF integration is totally different. Okay. See, JSF mein there is a big problem there. Your JSF facelets and backing beam are tightly coupled. What that mean? You cannot just configure your XHTML pages here. If you do that, those XHTML pages will be considered as normal XHTML pages by Spring. Spring won't recognize them as JSF component. Spring will not allow you to use any JSF component there, because for Spring it is basic XML file, nothing more than that. If you actually want to use facelet, there is a different technique for that. Okay. Anyway, let's see. So view resolver is configured now. So what is our next step? We should create a folder inside webinf. So this is my webinf, and let me make a folder inside this. Folder is pages, and inside this pages folder I'm going to create this file, hello.jsp file. Which file? hello.jsp. Let's see. Now here I'll write hello.jsp. Okay. Okay. Let me put here a simple EL expression, MSG. Dollar curly braces MSG. Same message I'll put here, MSG. Okay. Yes. What will happen if I try to run this JSP page directly? I'll get 404 error, even though page exists, because it is stored inside webinf. So I won't be able to start hello.jsp directly. So what we have to do then? What to do then? Right? Yeah. How to run it, right? Okay. Anyway, this controller class is not a HTTP servlet. So if I keep your cursor here and click on run, it won't run it properly, right? So there is only one way actually. We can modify that later. Let's create one startup page, HTML page with name index.html. This will be my welcome page. What is it? This is going to be my welcome page. And here let me just add a simple hyperlink, welcome.do. क्या hyperlink डाल दिया मैंने? welcome.do. अब मैं इसे रन करता हूँ और फिर मैं एक्सप्लेन करूँगा आपको कि ये स्टेप बाय स्टेप कैसे रन होता है.
So what if we directly write in the browser adapt welcome.do?
That way also it will work. You can just start your application. In the beginning it will show not found error because there is no index.html or JSP page. There you just go to your address bar and manually type welcome.do. That way also it's going to work. Let's see what happens when I click on welcome.do. Now there are two things. Number one, if you look at URL, it is showing welcome.do, right? That's the name of controller.
Hello.do.
But this page, welcome.spring.mvc, we are getting this output from hello.jsp page, which is not seen anywhere, right? can we access hello.jsp directly through address bar? No, because it's protected component. It's inside WebINF. Okay, this is how Spring works. This is how Spring works. Let's see what will happen if there is some mistake in view resolver. मैंने व्यू रिजॉल्वर में पेजेस के बाद फॉरवर्ड स्लैश देना भूल गया. ये ज़्यादातर लोग यही मिस्टेक करते हैं, इसलिए मैं पहले ही दिखा रहा हूँ आपको. क्या होगा अगर मैं ये मिस्टेक करता हूँ और फिर index.html को रन करता है. लेट्स सी व्हाट हैपेंस. Are you getting this 404 error now?
Pages hello.jsp.
Now name of pages, pages hello.jsp, and obviously there is no such page. Problem was pages is name of folder, right? So there was one extra forward slash required there. Is that clear? Yeah. So this is very common mistake which obviously you people will be doing. Okay? Just add one forward slash and your problem is solved, and it will be allowed to you. It will allow you to go to that particular page, and this will prove how view resolvers work. Yes, this is how your view resolvers work. Is that clear?
सर एक बार ये कौन सा मॉडल कौन सा व्यू कौन सा कंट्रोल
हाँ बताता हूँ.